morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives.
The politicians are all in Georgia.
Let's just scrub the politicians. I don't think they've purchased any earthly value today for us. Viewpoint. We always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo. And Judith K., it just seems to me appropriate with what we've had here recently in the way of what we used to call in the Air Corps QAM weather. It would be appropriate to just throw a big kudo out to all of the first responders. I thought of the utility companies when the trees iced over the other day.
Oh, yes.
And that creates a serious problem for them. And so kudos to all of our first responders who are out there. I don't care what uniform they wear. They're doing some real good. So now let's get serious. We have a very homely young lass with us that would do well to stand on Kresge's corner and sing.
Well, yes, she would.
I don't know if many people would like to hear it.
I remember when the Salvation Army would have little instrumental groups, 2, 3, 4 maybe, and play their horns and their instruments and stand on Kresge's corner. That's the dime store corner to anybody who doesn't know what Kresge's is.
Yes.
We had Kresge's and Woolworths, all in the same block, by the way. So let's get down to serious business. Introduce this young lady.
Yeah, Rachel Oney is the director of
Who's
the
a local girl, by the way, by osmosis.
Yes. Yes. Her husband is from right here. And so now she is too. Mm-hmm. Aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, and we welcome you. You've been here a couple years now, Rachel.
Yeah.
Are you happy here?
Yeah. It's definitely different from what I'm used to, but I've gotten used to the small community, so
well, we probably should state right up front that Rachel is in charge. Tony has retired now, so Mrs. Oney is in charge of the local Salvation Army facilities here.
Yes.
Are on Kickapoo Street. And a tough job, particularly in today's times. Now this COVID thing, of course, has come around full swing, and that threw a whole bunch of new beans on her plate.
Yeah.
And let's just go there for a minute. What immediate impact has that had on you and the administration of your duties there?
Well, it's had I feel, a fairly large impact. The biggest thing that happened was when Tony retired, then a few months in, one of our main longtime volunteers and now admin assistant, many of you know Bill Dolan, came down with COVID. So instead of going from 3 of us, we went down to 2 and then down to 1 pretty quickly. So that definitely had a big impact.
It's had an impact on everybody in the known world.
I'd like to tip my hat in the direction of Tony Schuff. He did a great job for us while he was in charge there. Worked hard. Lord knows anybody take the cleaning business and go in there and clean somebody's business quarters at 3 o'clock in the morning is not afraid of hard work.
Yeah.
Tip my hat to tip of our collective hats, I should say.
Yes.
To Tony Schuff. Now, Rachel, your family has grocery stores here in Central Illinois.
Yes, they do.
That's interesting.
Well, they did, I should say.
They did. Thank goodness that's past tense then. Yeah. What was your most, when you open the door in the morning, what's the most trying question that enters your mind, Rachel? And there must be many.
Well, the biggest thing would probably be I think my biggest question right now is volunteers, so that we can continue to serve more.
It's got to be tough, really tough. Yeah.
As always, the more people we can have, I mean, I know you can't have too many people right now because of COVID, but the more volunteers we have, then that means the longer we can keep our doors open and continue to serve the public.
I'm sure everyone who's dependent on volunteers is suffering right now, because they tell us you ought to just stay home.
Right.
Yes, and that makes it tough for everybody. Now, how about fundraising? Because Christmas time was always a big fundraising time. for the Salvation Army. Do you find that still so pretty much across the board?
Well, the Christmas time is our biggest fundraiser of the year still. But this year it has hit all Salvation Armies pretty hard.
Yes.
I think across the board, most places are down by about 50%. And our location, I think we're down by about 38%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a
That's
pretty
a-
big difference.
yeah.
So far, we did raise about 16,000, and normally our goal is 26,000. So we are
You are a
definitely
bit down.
short.
Yes, you are. Now,
know,
but the
speaking-
expenses go on.
Judith
Yes,
K.,
they do.
speaking of funding, a friend of ours put a very important vignette on Facebook the other day. She's a good writer. She and her registered nurse daughter, they talk about Guy Lombardo having the sweetest music this side of heaven.
Yes.
Well, those two girls have the sweetest smile this side of heaven, I'll tell you that. So, anyway, Marcia put together a little vignette that was kind of gripping. And the reason I mention that is it kind of raises a challenge point. In essence, she talked about the fella who had gotten fired from his job due to COVID. Comes home and find out his wife had lost her job as a waitress, wait staff, because of the same reason.
Right.
The rent was due. The house was cold. They went to the car and turned on the car heaters as long as the gas would hold up to try and stay warm. It was a very gripping vignette. And I thought that was well written. And it called to mind, to me at least, there's a lot of need out there. A lot of need out there. So I want to issue a challenge to our listeners. More than two of you out there, please. Why don't you make it a point? You don't have to stop and go to the phone right now. I want you to listen to what Bill and Judy have to say, and Rachel. But make it a point to go to the phone, and you can call Mr. Ice later today or call the Salvation Army with a pledge. 648-5510 here. And to kick that off...
And 732-7890 at the Salvation Army.
To kick that off, we're going to put some seed money in there of $50. And I'd like to see that grow exponentially in the next couple of days. Make it a point to call Mr. Ash or the local Salvation Army. Let me have that number again, please. So,
732-7890.
Salvation
Like
Army.
78910.
Just make a pledge and then follow through with that pledge and make sure they get a check. I'd like to see how much money we can raise.
Good for you, Bill.
So, well, there's just this was a vignette that Marcia wrote, and I thought it was well done, but it called attention to the fact that there's a lot of need out there daily, things
yes.
which we know nothing about and are happy that we don't know about those things, but there's a lot of need. So loosen up your purse strings just a little bit, folks, and let's see if we can do this in honor of the mother and daughter registered nurse team. They're great kids, and so think about it. A little pledge. Doesn't have to be a lot, but if it was a lot, we'd sure love it. 648-5510 here, and the Salvation Army, Judith K.
732-7890. I was on that board about 100 years ago. And I can still remember that telephone number. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast, but I can remember that telephone number.
Nice. We
Well-
do actually see that quite often, that description that you gave, and we have different COVID funds available specifically for the rent purposes, and this year is the first year in 10 years that Logan and Mason County have applied for emergency food and shelter program. So with that, we also have expanded rental assistance for Logan and Mason County.
Do you have both entities?
Both counties, yes.
Mrs. Oney, you perform a service which is near and dear to my heart for homeless veterans. Now, I think that needs to be defined. A lot of people take full advantage of that and abuse that system. So tell us a little bit about how you not cater to, that's the wrong word, how you serve the homeless veterans.
Well, for our homeless veterans, we've got, the Salvation Army actually has a couple of programs. The Grant Per Diem program is the Bridge Transitional Housing. So it's a 90-day program where they're allowed to stay in our facilities. And then while they're there, they normally get not just one case manager, but probably about 3, maybe 4 case managers. That's due to the different programs that they offer. So one person, when they come in, is there to help with making sure that they have their veteran benefits specifically, and whatever other basic needs that they may need. And then they have a supportive service for veterans and families program that's in all Salvation Armies, and they are hooked up with that case manager who helps them find, they also have their own rental assistance just for veterans, and utility assistance that can help for, I believe, up to like 9 months, so that they can fully get on their feet.
That's
get a
very
new
generous.
Vehicle or whatever it might need to, again, make them more stable. And the Pathway of Hope program, which I run, works in tandem with that. Normally it's for families only, but with the funds we have, we can help single individuals as well. And so sometimes in central Illinois, there's not a lot of transportation. You'll hear that as a really huge problem for not just veterans, but anyone who's in the low-income range or living on the streets. Trying to get to just a doctor's appointment is difficult. So with that program, we can help pay for the transportation, and I get more assistance, whether it be education, legal documents, your IDs, social security cards, getting them, again, more economically stable. And between those case managers, once they've exited the program, then if something were to happen, maybe they did get laid off like 3 months in, or even 6 months down the road, there's a case manager who then at that point, once they've exited, can step in and still work with them to see, okay, what can we do to help you not lose your rent or your mortgage at this time.
Business, I'm sure, has expanded exponentially for you.
As far as need goes, yes.
Yes,
that's for sure.
So, we have a need here. It's called needing to recognize our sponsors, who are always very kind to us. So we're going to take a couple of seconds time now, and Mr. Ash is going to recognize our fine sponsors. And right back live in the studios here. This is Viewpoint, a program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Our guest this morning, a far cry from the days of General Evangeline Booth with her little crumpled critical hat and black demure uniform. Things have changed. Things have changed mightily throughout the entire salvation structure. And happily, we have a young lady now who is qualified by education and by desire, and that I emphasize by desire, who is willing to help us here. Oh, and by the way, speaking of desire, we have an open challenge out there. Encourage you to call 648-5510 with a pledge to the Salvation Army. And Mrs. Busby, the Salvation Army number is
732-7890.
Okay, build on that $50 we started them with, folks. Let's do a little something about that today. Rachel, as I indicated before we went on commercial break, service to the veterans, near and dear to those my age, and we're about out of the picture now, but we've got a lot of young Koreans, and most importantly, the Vietnam veterans who didn't get a very good shake. And that's we have what's known as an addiction problem, and I don't think until you've walked in those moccasins you can have any idea what an addiction is.
True.
And so let's just talk about that just a minute, Mrs. Oney.
So, I mean, veterans, I think, as well as just homeless population, can deal and heavily deal with different kinds of substance misuse. And for one reason or another, there is a reason why they're in the situation they've came into and why they're staying at our center. And sometimes, more often than not, substance misuse is one of those reasons. We do try and work a lot with the different mental health providers in town. They have a lot of telehealth now, but we
A
also
lot of what, I'm sorry?
telehealth during COVID.
Okay.
So you can try and meet with somebody over the phone or video. There is a nice place in town. Tazwood is just a few blocks from our center, and they'll help with substance use screenings and then relapse prevention plans. So we work closely with them, but also it is a thing in the community, just mental health generally, because it's not substance use that's the problem, but it's what's going on behind that. It's the mental health and dealing with what brought you to that place in the first place. So looking at, and there's not as many places that help specifically with veterans, because even if you have a mental health provider, there's fewer mental health providers that understand where a veteran's coming from and dealing with everything that comes along with that. So sitting there talking to a civilian counselor versus sitting there and talking to somebody who's actually gone through similar things and knows why you're experiencing this in the first place is entirely different. And that's our one thing I know that the VAC, the Veterans Association Commission here in town, with Joe Shaler and a few other agencies in town, we've been working with trying to get a few more things set up locally. I know the SIU Medicine in town, they have one person, I believe, right now who's working with behavioral health, but that person specifically does not have a veteran background. So one thing we are looking for is veterans within the community who can come and be more of somewhat of a support group and help stand alongside people and walk beside them.
Well, you mentioned that you were in desperate need of volunteers at this time.
Yes.
And especially evidently in that category, huh? Mm-hmm. Well, surely that we're not involved in a declared war right now, then we aren't as cognizant of those problems.
Well, I think we're involved in a declared war. It's the Democrats versus the Republicans. The howitzers are on the congressional building floor.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to make fun of that. That's another story right now. But one of the basic human needs is sleep warm. Mm-hmm. Now that's two words, but there are a lot of people who do not sleep warm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, if anybody desires a basic need or is entitled to a basic need, it would be that. So that's one of the things you're affording some of our veterans. Thank goodness for that. And so thank you for that. That's a whole other ball game, though, and that can be, I assume, that can be abused if you're got your eyes shut, not willing to watch.
I suppose it can, but we have fairly decent workers. Even though I'm the only person stationed there for Lincoln, we do have a grant per diem Kate supervisor who's in charge of that whole program, and we also have a case manager that is specifically for the veterans as well. So between the three of us, we meet with the veterans, and if something comes up, then one or all three of us are there to step in and try and gauge what's going on.
I want to snap a salute in Joe Shaler's direction. Joe quietly goes about his job and does a lot of things for veterans. And in that regard, too, our Veterans Benefit Office there, next to the Lincoln Library, Danny Benedict does a good job of helping Benedict. And I presume that you rely on those two gentlemen for some help, at least some advice.
Yeah, they've been really helpful. They sometimes get different kinds of donations and are able to, when we're in need of something, like they've donated a wheelchair to like one of the veterans who was staying in our facility, as well as a walker for someone who didn't need the wheelchair but needed something to still help get around. And I know they're actually right like a diagonal from us, so I don't have to point too hard when a new veteran comes in and say, just right across the street there,
Yeah.
you'll be able to find it, and Dan or Joe. So it's been really helpful to have them there. We're also working on a civic center, so that's going to be for all of central Illinois. It's something that's been really dear to Joe's heart. I know we've been working for maybe at least a year, 2 years, at least on my end, and Joe's been working on it longer, but we'd really like to see more than just this transitional housing for veterans that we have, but more long-term and then permanent housing for veterans in the area.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this housing for veterans. And instead of looking at the cup half empty, let's look at it half full. The Salvation Army seems to have embraced veterans as one of their causes in helping with housing and health. Let's talk a little bit about your veterans programs. And I suppose Kickapoo's a pretty busy street, busy as it can be in the Lincoln America. And a lot of people go up and down there and would have noticed that the building over the past years has changed. And let's tell us what that's pretty well dedicated to.
Well, I know years back it did burn down. There used to be a church there, but we don't have one currently. The facility, we use every square inch of the building. At times it feels like it's bursting. But our main floor has our community center, which is open to the public. We've moved our food pantry downstairs, so we've got a lot of food comes through the Midwest Food Bank and the Postal Drive. A few of the food pantries in town every May do receive different kinds of food donations from the mail carrier, USPS, Post Office Drive. This year during COVID, it did not go off because of COVID, so we were a little bit low, a lot of food pantries on canned goods. But then upstairs in our building, we have the different rooms for our veterans. So they do have on the main floor access to a kitchen, as well as washer, dryer, and a small community room for tables and lockers and things.
Well, that's very good. That's a step in the right direction. And are you pretty well full all the time?
We were full for a long time. We were staying at 7 to 8 for like March through, I want to say, probably even through September, October. But we've had a couple of veterans able to find housing, some within the surrounding area, and some exits. So right now we are down to 4 veterans.
Your help is more of a hands up as opposed to a hands out help. You're trying to help somebody get through a period of their time of their lives. You're not trying to take them by the wrist and stroke them by the hand and say, everything's going to be all right. It's a hands up situation with you. Is that correct? Yeah, we definitely try and give people the resources that they are going to need in the community, so that when we're no longer in a helping relationship with that person, that they know where their resources are. We never want to enable someone, and we want to make sure that whenever someone comes in, that they're leaving in a better place that they came in. So whether it's just getting food that day, who knows, we might not be able to help. But we want to make sure that they're walking away with something.
Let's talk a little bit about that food pantry. What kind of hours do you have? What kind of commodities do you have? Who's eligible? Is it open to the world at large?
Our food pantry is open to the general public. You don't have to bring anything in to qualify for food. When we look at it, if you're coming in for food, then you probably need it. We're not going to say no to somebody who's asking for food.
They don't need the birth certificate.
You know, that's another way somebody could help directly. Rob Busby, out grocery shopping, buy a couple of extra packages of Wheaties or something, and take them by. That's another. It's a small way, but it's a direct way that you can help.
We definitely, food donations are always welcome. So normally when someone comes in for food, we also offer our hygiene items. So sometimes we have, depending on the donations that come in, we have anything from toilet paper, deodorants, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, conditioner, razors, and even feminine napkins, your pads and tampons. So we try
all necessary things.
All necessary things, but you may not, if the money is tight that month, you might not, some of those things can get a little expensive.
Yes, they can. How about like toilet soap and laundry soap?
Yeah, we also have, we actually recently got some donations for dish soap as well as detergent and regular soap and body wash as well.
Now, it occurs to me, and it doesn't take two bread of an occurrence, you're having this place open to furnish people to stay. You have janitorial services, and they're quite necessary. You do that?
I do when I can. And other times we do get a few community service volunteers, and sometimes they'll help with that. But one of the volunteers positions that is open is janitorial staff as well. So that would always
it's very, very, very important. Yeah.
Yes, every small thing that you could think of.
Now, by the way, when you have a veteran comes in and you feel that there's a need for him to see the VA clinic, either Springfield or Peoria, or perhaps Danville, how do you get them there?
Yeah,
that's always, sometimes I feel like a travel agent.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But they do have a newer location now in Bloomington, so that's a little helpful.
I heard that, yeah.
And that's where our Pathway of Hope program has come in pretty handy. So normally, like I said, you get at least 2 case managers when you come in. And the Pathway of Hope side can afford the transport, like a train ticket to go up to, whether it be Springfield or Bloomington. Now, Danville's a lot harder of an equation to work out.
It sure is. That's 90 miles over there. That's a long stretch.
Way.
Yeah. We've had to get people to Peoria or Bloomington first, and then back down to Danville, because Peoria and Bloomington both have the VA shuttle that runs straight to Danville. Unfortunately, they don't stop in Lincoln to then go on their way to Danville.
But if you can get them to Springfield or Bloomington, at least they can catch that.
Yes.
I want to say this about the VA, Judith K.
It's a whole day event.
Yeah, it can be. But, every once in a while you hear somebody knock the VA. I've been in it a long time now, many years. I've never had a minute's difficulty with the Veterans Administration, and in fact they're the reason I can hear the way I do. I just can't say enough about the VA. The Bob Michael Center and the Springfield Center I'm not familiar with. Well, I was to Danville once. Boy, that is a long ride over there. But there's an attitude that prevails that I've encountered by the folks that are helping. They are helpful, and they want to serve us. And so I kind of throw a snappy salute in the direction of the VA while I'm mouthing off here this morning.
That's most acceptable. Let's talk a little bit about this vehicle that you came in this morning.
Yeah, we've been trying for at least 2.5 years to get an emergency disaster vehicle, and it's finally here, which is really exciting. It has the 2 bucket seats up front, and then a bench for volunteers to sit in case there is an emergency. So our emergency disaster services, normally we're serving the first responders.
The which?
First responders.
Yes.
So, no, the most recent thing I think we went to was when that plane crashed on the highway, I-55 there. We didn't have our vehicle yet, but we were able to do a small thing by providing some sandwiches to the firefighters who were out there.
Well, and I'm sure they appreciate somebody bringing them something warm or cold to drink, as the case may be.
Because you never know how long the situation is going to last.
Right.
So if you can, they're not going to stop because they have to keep doing what they have to do. And so if we can come
They're not on the
alongside
clock, are they? No.
You know, Mrs. Oney,
So-
I'm sitting here thinking as an old timer, I think it might be appropriate if we would recall the history of the Keast Salvation Army Center, because we had some significant seed money that brought that to fruition, and that's a Logan County family. So tell us a little bit about that, if you will, Mrs. Oney. I think it was the Oscar Keast family that put up the front money on that, and so, you know, they're a Logan County family, and they ought to be recognized.
Yeah, the Keast family, it still says Keast on the side of the building.
Rightfully so.
And even still, they do still donate from time to time to the center, which is always appreciated, and we definitely are very thankful even today for them. The building originally, like I think I mentioned earlier, it did completely burn down at one point, so we were left without a building, and without them we wouldn't be able to do the work we are today. So.
And I suppose the work you are doing today is something that's always in a state of flux, isn't it? Now we have COVID, and I suppose there's nobody that's not affected by that. So I suppose you're getting business from people who are affected.
Now, in the structure of the Salvation Army, to whom do you report, Mrs. Oney?
I've got two supervisors, because one side I do case management under Pathway of Hope, and her name's Glennie Lucas. She's out of Peoria. And then my other supervisor, who is in charge of service extension as well as emergency disaster services, is Sam Amick. They have both been there for many years, and I'm very happy to have both of them as supervisors because they both have their own fields of expertise that I can rely on in different situations. Sam actually came down and did a little bit of bell ringing for us. So that was nice. And one day I had to quarantine in the middle of giving out our Christmas presents because my husband came in contact was positive for COVID. So we quarantined till we could find out that we were negative. So him and one of our kettle assistants, Pam Pollard, has come on to also help out with. She was volunteering, and since Bill is gone, we've been kind of holding her on as a temporary employee for now, hoping that Bill can come back. But her and Sam stayed and were able to get all the gifts out while I was gone.
To whom do you give Christmas gifts?
The Christmas gifts go to children who are 15 and under. So families throughout the November time frame come in and fill out our Adopt a Family applications. Adopt a Family is our name for Angel Tree. So if you've heard of Angel Tree,
yes.
Faith Assembly was really big, as well as Integrity Data. They picked up a lot of those tags for us. And Walmart this was the first year we partnered with them to go ahead and actually put tags up on the trees. We didn't get too far with putting the tags at Walmart, just because we didn't have as many as I thought we were going to have. But we definitely were appreciative of Walmart stepping up to try and help us with that as well.
Certainly. There was a mention a little bit ago of volunteer opportunities and needs on the part of the Salvation Army. Maybe if you could tell us some of the categories where the need is greatest, maybe there's somebody listening who would do that as their New Year's resolution.
Yeah, we have 4 main categories, I would say, as food pantry would be one. Whether or not it's during open hours or if it's afterwards and going through to just package those things, because normally we try and pre-package bags that have breakfast and dinner meals as well as our frozen items to go along with it. And then there's restocking shelves like you would a grocery store, but you're restocking it with food pantry items and donations. So all of that comes into play. We mentioned janitorial things, groundskeep, generally just outside, whether it's during the winter or during the summer. We also have some clerical work. So that could be anything between helping answering phones, potentially doing what we call intakes, which is kind of like screening. What services can we offer you, to reaching out to just doing outreach. So when I can't do too much right now because of COVID, but we're always looking for some opportunities. So potentially we sometimes need help. Like when we did Halloween, me and one other volunteer stood out and we handed out over 70 food pantry bags to different families in the community. While Faith Assembly was doing their trick-or-treating, we had the food pantry and masks and hand sanitizer. So helping out with our small outreach, and we also need help with sometimes just stats is not my favorite. So if anybody likes numbers and they want to help out with that one, I always appreciate it. We had one volunteer who came in and absolutely loves stats, and I had never met somebody who had a heart for doing numbers, and I was just like, where have you come from? Because we need more of you.
What a blessing, huh?
Yeah.
648-5510. Somebody might have a question. Rachel Oney is current director, and we hope for a little while too, not just current right now, director of our Salvation Army, doing a whale of a job. Salvation Army, quietly doing a lot of good for some people who are in real need. The history of the Salvation Army goes back to what year, my dear? General Evangeline Booth.
See if I can remember. I think it was 1856, I think.
My goodness gracious, 1856.
And they've always been revered.
They're there.
You know, they're there and they're on the front lines and they're helping people and they're taking care of things and going about it quietly without a lot of fanfare, although they used to surely stand on the corners in downtown Minneapolis around Christmas time and everybody loved it.
Yeah.
If
you want a bell ring for us next year, let us know.
Okay.
By all means.
We got a few locations you can stand at.
I think me taking a bell ringing assignment to this is not very gainful. Somebody have rung my bell before then.
Dear.
With respect to your vehicle,
Yes.
would it be that somebody could volunteer a place for you to keep that vehicle at night? Somebody hopefully fairly close to you. It'd be nice if some real estate person had some facilities that they could accommodate that.
That would be amazing. We've got the vehicle but don't have a place currently to store it. So normally we're looking for some place that is hopefully enclosed or at least like halfway enclosed. But we would be needing to get into it in case a disaster were to happen.
Sure.
Because it's there for disaster purposes besides just our regular food bank runs.
Yeah, you can't wait on Joe Smith to come open up his garage to get your vehicle out. No, that won't work.
Yeah, so that's the more tricky part is you gotta, besides just willing to give us a space, you gotta be willing to let us come onto property then and get the vehicle out.
Well, that doesn't sound like the end of the world, though. I mean, if they just give you a key.
Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Oney, we appreciate your taking time out of a busy time. You get daily directives from up above, so to speak, on this COVID business?
Actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, when Tony was still here, I was going to the SEOC down in Springfield, which is the Emergency Operations Center, and we have a head person who represents the Salvation Army for our division, who is at one of the seats at the table in Springfield. So you've got your National Guard, FEMA, Red Cross, everyone who you can think of representing the various VOANs, which is, your volunteer agencies, as well as your state operatives, your Department of Human Services and Health field, are all there to give advice and see, what is our emergency plan during the pandemic. So they often will update us on what's coming through from the state so that we're up to date on correct COVID policies, but then we also are giving them COVID stats, so that way they can tell the state, hey, this is still a need here, so please, whether it's showing the services that we are doing so that they know people are still in need in these counties, and this is what the Salvation Army is doing, whether or not it's for more funding coming back to us, or if they're saying this isn't being met, so what can we do?
Rachel Oney, representing one of the most important charities we have in the community. The very word charity is a good word. So no matter where you put your money or your whatever you're going to do to help in any charity, it's a good present. But I want to tell you, you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck with the Salvation Army. Near and dear to our hearts. Thank you very, very much, my dear. You're walking out of here with my pledge. And
thank you.
I hope that other people will remember our little challenge to them. Thank you, Rachel Oney.
Not a problem. Thank you.